Hi, my name is Darren Gerdes. I'm a professor who's been tracking what's been going on in Ukraine since almost the very beginning, and I'm here to interpret the news for you and help you kind of see what's going on behind the headlines. So, we're going to start with viewer comments, and what I normally do is start by trying to say, "Hello, my friends," in Ukrainian, and I usually don't get it quite right, but I'll show you how I'm trying to do this. We'll talk about infighting among Russian military leaders. We'll talk about how much nukes actually matter. And I don't think they matter like we think they matter. They matter, but they don't matter in the same way that we think they do. And I'll explain my reasoning. We'll talk about phase 3 of the war, what it'll look like. We'll talk about what just happened yesterday with the European Court of Human Rights. And then we'll talk about how to know what Russia really thinks. Okay, it's going to be a big one. Let's go. Привіт, мі друзі. Okay, I don't know if I got that right either, but I had some help this time because in a viewer comment I had this: Привіт, мі друзі. Okay, I don't know if that's right. I'm not actually talking to anyone. People are trying to help me with this, but here's why I started with what I started with. I was listening to this from Google after getting the translation from Anna from Ukraine.
Привіт, мої друзі.
That doesn't sound quite the same as what was listed here. So that's what I'm trying to do. So please be gentle on me. I keep getting this like, you're not even trying to speak Ukrainian. I'm trying. I really am trying, but I'm not exactly sure where to go. So I got this from Annette from CA, who was saying, sounds like pray, but rolled the tongue with R's. Previt me Jeruzia. Okay, so I'm trying. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start here on Twitter. This is the British Ministry of Defense talking about over the last 6 days, Russian online commentators have claimed Russian forces have made significant advances breaking through Ukrainian defenses in 2 areas. Now, I looked at this and it looked like a big nothing burger to me. I looked at it, I was watching other commentators talking about on the battle map, here's what's happening, here's how they're attacking, here's how they're defending. I don't think this is the real thing yet. The thing is coming. The thing's coming in a couple of months, but I don't think this is it. This is just little skirmishing efforts to kind of keep the armies pinned down, but that's it. It's highly unlikely that Russia has actually achieved any substantial advances, and that's true. You can see that in the battle maps when you watch other channels. There is a realistic possibility that the Russian military sources are deliberately spreading misinformation in an effort to imply that the Russian operation is sustaining momentum, and they need that back home so that they can tell their domestic audience, hey, look what we're doing and how awesome we are. So, but nothing of real substance has happened yet as far as I can detect. Okay, so let's get to our first topic, the infighting within what's going on in the within the military. Okay, so here, a recent altercation between Wagner Group financier Prigozhin and former Russian officer Gherkin are exposing a new domain for competition among the Russian nationalist group for political influence within Russia. Now, these next 2 paragraphs were so bizarre, I'm not even going to try to interpret them. I'm just going to tell you, go out if you really want to get the backstory to this and what they're saying about each other. It's almost like a soap opera, but just on a large scale and dealing with the military. You can read this on your own. Go to understandingwar.org. That's the ISW website, and you can read that. But I'm going to give you some highlights of this because they're calling each other names and blaming each other for stuff, and creating straw man arguments about each other's positions. But Prigozhin is trying to curry favor with Putin. Prigozhin and Gherkin, both critics of President Putin's conduct of the war, are likely competing for influence and patronage among pro-war politicians disillusioned with the progress of the war. Now, Prigozhin's attack on Gherkin may benefit Putin inadvertently, accidentally. Prigozhin is very prominent in the Russian information space, and many Mill bloggers accuse Gherkin of lacking combat experience and cowardice in response to this exchange. Prigozhin may have attempted to undermine Gherkin to gain influence in the nationalist space, while simultaneously, but not necessarily intentionally, discrediting one of the most prominent Putin critics. Prigozhin is likely attempting to maximize his influence to avoid Gherkin's fate. Well, what was Gherkin's fate? And it tells you. The Kremlin had seemingly rid itself of Gherkin after his militants retreated from Slovyansk and following his involvement in the downing of the Malaysian Airlines Flight 17. That's going to become important later on, so stay tuned. You'll hear why that's going to become important. Gherkin was removed from the position of Minister of Defense of the Donetsk People's Republic. Gherkin has a long history here. He goes way back. He understands what's going on the ground. and has not resurrected his influence with the Kremlin since then. Prigozhin, however, is trying to build a support base within the Kremlin and in Russian society to solidify his presence in Russian domestic affairs, even as Wagner struggles on the battlefield. So that's why they keep throwing people into the wood chipper in Bakhmut and Soledar, trying to see, we got this victory. Because Prigozhin's happy to make his name over the dead bodies of these convicts that he's put out on the battlefield. Putin conducted his campaign against critical opposition voices by cracking down on several major opposition media outlets, and this was just within the last couple of days. Putin signed a law on January 25th designating several major Russian language media and investigative outlets, including Meduza, Important Stories, Bellingcat, The Bell, and The Insider, as undesirable organizations within Russia, outlawing the publication, distribution, or financial support of the organizations and their publications. Like, this is like what we know in the United States is the First Amendment and shredding it. I mean, that's essentially what happened here. This is what happens in an authoritarian state. Putin has failed, however, to rein in highly critical nationalist mill bloggers who have long criticized and undermined the Russian Ministry of Defense, and that would be like folks like Gherkin and others, because they have such a huge following and they're nationalists. They want Russia to succeed, but they're actually at odds with Putin's agenda. So it's a soap opera is pretty much the best way that I can describe what's actually going on here. And to the degree that they keep infighting, they'll be more ineffective, or let me say it backwards, they'll be less effective actually waging the war. So this is great. Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about this article, because I want to challenge the idea that nukes are as important as we think that they are. They're important, but in a different way. So Trump suggests providing tanks to Ukraine will lead to nukes, and says ending the war with Russia will be easy. Okay, first come tanks, then come the nukes, Trump said on his social media platform. This is Truth Social. First come tanks, then come nukes. Get the crazy war ended now. So easy to do. So I went out to Truth Social and I replied to at Real Donald Trump. Can anyone explain how peace is easy to do? Now, it was only an hour ago. I don't know that I will get any explanation, but peace, in a sense, for Ukraine, now, peace is easy to do if you just say, yeah, sure, have those 4 oblasts and let's call peace. But that's not peace. And it won't be peace, because that'll just give Russia time to recharge and come back for the rest of Ukraine or Moldova or Georgia or whatever else Putin wants to go after. So that's not really peace. I don't expect to actually get an explanation for that. I'm just saying. But you can tell you're on the wrong side when RT shows, hey, this is a great idea. So Trump reacts to Ukraine tank plans. The U.S. president has issued a plea to get this crazy war ended. Okay, you're on the wrong side when RT is praising you. Same thing here with this other RT article. Trump, not far away from the truth on Ukraine, says the Kremlin. And then Peskov says that Trump is theoretically not far away from the truth. Okay, if RT's praising you, you're on the wrong side. That's just simply how it works. But let's talk about the whole overall idea about nukes. Now, I'm a Republican, so I don't really like drawing out that Trump did this thing, because I think he's on the wrong side. On this particular issue, he's way out of line. But Trump is actually articulating what Putin has done to Biden. Putin has deterred the West from giving Ukraine the arms that they need over time with the threat of nuclear weapons. Now, I don't think that nuclear weapons are actually a viable use during this war in Ukraine. If they were invading Russia, if there was some kind of all-out blitz on Moscow, I could see the use of nuclear weapons. But nuclear weapons they make you think that you're tougher than you are, but they alone don't make you tough. What I mean by that is, like, so the United States couldn't have used nuclear weapons in Afghanistan without becoming a pariah to the rest of the world, right? The scenario I'd give you, so you're in a bar fight, right? You're in an enclosed space in a bar. These guys are coming at you. You're swinging left and right. You have a grenade. That's like the nuclear weapon. But you can't use it. You can't pull the pin and kill everybody there, because you're going to ultimately kill yourself or hurt yourself very badly in the process. And that's what a nuclear weapon would be like. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that analogy is fair. Putin just having nuclear weapons doesn't make his army extra tough. It just means that he has this big trump card that if you come after me, ultimately I can pull the plug on everything. But that's not a viable option in Ukraine. So I think you have to be actually tough in the battlefield to be tough in the battlefield, not just have nuclear weapons off on the side. And I think that's why. So nuclear weapons are the boogeyman, but I don't think he's going to use it. I really just don't. So the long and short of this is that what Trump just articulated, which is bad, is what Biden has actually been doing. He's been deterred by Putin, and that's bad too. But he's incrementally coming out of it, almost like someone waking up and going, you know what? We can give him this too, and we can give him this too. Now, the misery is that people have died along the way because they didn't have the weapons that they needed to be able to fight back against the tyrants that were trying to control them and oppress them. And I'm not saying that Trump is right in what he's saying, but I'm not letting Biden off the hook either yet for having been so deterred by Putin along the way. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about what's going on in phase 3 of the war because it's coming. And in the very beginning, I talked about this. The Russian armed forces declared on Sunday that they had launched a new offensive in Zaporizhia region, but the Ukrainian soldiers seem unperturbed. I don't think that there's much to see here yet, but phase 3 is coming. Let's talk about phase 3. So we remember phase 1. Phase 1 was this all-out invasion, and then it kind of ebbed and flowed for a little while, and they eventually pulled back and tried to solidify a bit. Second phase has been an attempt of a war of attrition with thousands of Russian mercenaries, convicts sacrificed for small territorial gains around the towns of Bakhmut and Soledar. And remember, Bakhmut, they spent 6 months trying to take this little town that didn't mean anything, and they didn't take it, right? They eventually settled on the consolation prize of Soledar. The second phase was almost as complete a defeat as the first. Russia has used much of its cruise missile arsenal. While Ukrainians' power grid is battered, the lights are still on. The Ukrainians' will to fight is undimmed. This guy has a way with words, but that's right. Okay, now third phase is about to start, and what's going to happen there? It's an all-out battle for decisive advantage using combined arms, and this is why tanks are important. This is why we're asking for rockets and planes and things along those lines, because you need combined arms, mechanized infantry, artillery, air power, possibly waterborne assault to overcome fixed positions. It's something that we haven't seen. The Russians have not been able to bring combined arms to really to bear in meaningful ways to really repel the Ukrainians. They haven't. They've been terrible at this because they've been very apprehensive. They've been very defensive even in their attacks. They've been very hesitant to supply like they ought to. Europe has not witnessed anything of this sort since the Second World War, and we're about to see this in the next coming months. That's what's coming down the pike in phase 3. Now, phase 3 will require tanks. Russians step up the offensive in Ukraine as West displays a united front in support of Kyiv. Canada has been the latest country to declare its intention to give Ukraine tanks. They're going to send 4 Leopard 2 battle tanks. Okay, 4 is not a great deal, but it's not nothing. I mean, this will still have an impact. Poland, the Netherlands, and Spain previously announced their readiness to transfer Leopard 2 tanks. Polish Prime Minister said that Warsaw will give an extra 60 tanks to Ukraine, but these 60 aren't Leopard 2s. 30 of them are Polish PT-91s. So the type of tank that you have matters. I understand that in Iraq, Abrams tanks, for example, took direct frontal hits from Soviet-made tanks that just bounced off. Okay, I'm not an expert, but apparently the type of tank that you send actually matters. Training of Ukrainian crews and delivery of tanks will take at least about 2 months. So if things kick off before 2 months, you're not going to have the firepower that you need in order to sustain. Again, there's a pretty long front line. If you think about what's going on here, you have Ukraine is about the size of Texas, right? And you have a landmass about the size of Indiana, or if you're in a European context, about the size of Poland that they're trying to take back from the Russians. So that's what it is. So it's a pretty long front, but it's going to concentrate somewhere, and most experts that I've heard said it's going to concentrate around Luhansk. So that's what we would expect to be coming down the pike. At the same time, you're going to see other things that are happening as phase 3 kicks off too. I think you're going to see more Russians trying to save their lives by surrendering. This was a fascinating bit in The Guardian. This was a fascinating bit in The Guardian about the I Want to Surrender hotline. So here, I'm going to read the words. You won't be able to hear, or maybe you will be able to understand if you understand Ukrainian or Russian. I'm listening to you. Russian soldier says, hello, they gave me your number. They say you can surrender voluntarily. Yes, I'm in the Kherson direction. Have you already mobilized? Are you already in the military? Yes, I've been mobilized. Soon we will be sent to Kherson. I will ask you to go to Telegram, find the chatbot I want to live there, and fill in your information about yourself there. When the Ukrainian military comes to us, do I have to get on my knees? How to surrender? When you're on the front line, immediately call us here again. But I'm not alone. A group of soldiers want to surrender. But they say that Ukraine, we can be imprisoned for 10 years. If you voluntarily surrender, you will be registered as captured on the battlefield. All your benefits, all your payments are yours. Is there any guarantee that if I surrender, I will not be filmed? I will not be beaten? There are people who want to give interviews so that they can be seen in Russia and exchanged as soon as possible. You may be in an exchange pool, and you can apply for political asylum in Ukraine, Germany, and the Netherlands. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that we're going to see more of when phase 3 kicks off, I believe. I mean, I'm no prophet. I can't tell you for sure, but I'm telling you, I think you're going to see more of that. More than 6,500 Russian military personnel have already sought to surrender through the I Want to Live hotline, and this is a brilliant use of using technology in order to help pull the odds in your favor. By the way, I think that one of the things that we have to understand when the next phase comes, you need a 3-to-1 ratio, generally speaking, in war in order to attack as opposed to defend. But I think technology has been making that easier to be 2-to-1 or something more along those lines. Technology just being able to look on a cell phone or something and being able to coordinate drone attacks or things along those lines. It's just amazing what the Ukrainians have been able to do. Okay, I'm going to turn my attention to another fascinating issue. This happened just yesterday. A vital ECHR judgment opens the way for Russia to be held accountable for MH17 and other war crimes in Ukraine. So the European Court of Human Rights has found unanimously that occupied Donbass, the Russian proxy Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, were under Russian jurisdiction from 11 May 2014. So it's not, as the Russians claim, a civil war and the Ukrainians are doing these bad things. No, they're occupied by Russia. They're essentially under Russian jurisdiction from 11 May 2014. So interstate applications to the ECHR against the Russian Federation over shooting down by a Russian BUK missile MH17 and killing of 298 civilians can be considered by the court. That means that Russia can be prosecuted by the European Court of Human Rights, which Russia is a part of or was a part of during all this time. So that's not just the Malaysian airliner MH17. That's all, whatever war crimes have transpired there has been under Russian jurisdiction because they've occupied it. So Russia's withdrawal from the European Convention on Human Rights, Moscow tried to legislate backdating this withdrawal to March of 2022, but they didn't actually pull out until September 16th of 2022. And so the court said it's entirely clear that there are parties to the convention is not released from the obligations contained in the convention in respect of any act performed by that state prior to the date on which it is no longer a party to the convention, which means that they can go after Russia for war crimes up to that time under the sanctions of this convention that Russia had signed on to previously. So this is a big deal. I don't know how to explain just how big a deal it is, but it's a big deal. So we'll look for more about this coming down the pike. Okay, let's turn our attention now again to some other aspects where I was just talking about political technology on the battlefield, and Russia plays down. Now, this is how you can tell when the Russians are thinking one thing or another. And this is my last big topic. Russia plays down the West move on tanks and attacks Ukraine anew. So that they're saying, oh, well, this isn't a big deal. These tanks, they'll burn like any others. We'll just destroy those tanks too. When they say that, but they haven't been able to destroy other stuff. When they say these kinds of things, you can tell that that's a real threat to them. Here's how you can also see when the Russians mean one thing and say the other. The Ukrainians' potential is exhausted. Chances for counteroffensive is slim. You can't do this one-to-one, but to the degree that you can say whatever the RT is saying, the opposite is probably closer to the truth. It probably is. And you can see that when you see, like, I first noticed this around Bucha. You could see Western reports of actual Western reporters on the ground taking pictures, showing stuff, and then you see what they're saying about in RT and Pravda and TASS, and it's like uh, exactly the opposite, but they lie, and they lie with impunity, and they have a culture of lying for this. And so you know what's important by what they focus on lying about, if that makes any sense. So if this video was useful to you, I would appreciate it if you'd give us a like, share, subscribe, ring that bell. I want to particularly thank those of you that mentioned me to Ukraine Matters, because that's how he found me, and then he gave me a shout out. I also looked at his channel after that and went, whoa, hey, he's got some good stuff here. Gave him a shout out. We're all on the same team, trying to get to the same place of providing as much information as possible so that people can stay informed about what's going on in Ukraine. If you want to support me, you can buy me a cup of coffee, and I'd appreciate that. You can read my book on Zelensky free on Amazon Kindle Unlimited. Now I'm to the perilous part of this video. I'm going to try it again, but I want you to understand when I mispronounce things, this is what I've been going off of to pronounce the thank you for supporting Ukraine.
Дякую, що ви вболіваєте за Україну.
See Ukraine, no you at the end, right? So it's Ukraini. Okay, I got it. Дякую, що ви вболіваєте за Ukraini. Okay, I hope that worked. Thank you for your time. I'll talk to you tomorrow.